Okay, so we're going to look at some solving equations with variables on both sides. We talked about the steps to solve equations with variables on both sides. The first thing I want to look for is if I can distribute. So I'm looking for pairs of parentheses where I would be multiplying the outside term to all terms on the inside. I'm going to draw my line down the middle of my equal sign just to make sure I don't cross any barriers here. So my first step is to distribute the 3 to both terms inside the parentheses. On the left-hand side, giving me 3 minus 9x equals, and on the right-hand side, I could distribute the 2 to both terms inside the parentheses, giving me negative 8x plus 14. My next step would be to combine like terms on either side of the equal sign. I do not have those here on the left or the right side. My next step will be to use inverse operations to move one variable or the variables to one side. I always tell students to move the smaller variable in order to not have to deal with negative coefficients for my variable. So if I'm looking at negative 9x and negative 8x, the negative 9 is smaller, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 9x to both sides. If I add 9x, I'm left with 3 on the left-hand side. Negative 8x plus 9x is 1x, or just x, plus 14. And now that the x is on the right-hand side, now I want to move the constants to the left-hand side, so I'm going to subtract 14 here. On the left-hand side, I get negative 11. On the right-hand side, I get x. So my answer is negative 11 equals x, or x equals negative 11. Alright, another example here. Again, I want to first look for distribution. On the left-hand side, I have nothing, so I'm just going to bring this down. Negative 31 minus 4x equals. I have this negative 5 here that I'm going to distribute to both terms here. So the negative 5 stays as is before there. And then I get minus 5 minus 25x. My next step is to combine like terms on either side of the equal sign. So on the left-hand side, I don't have any like terms, but on the right-hand side, I have this negative 5 and this negative 5. So on the left-hand side, I rewrite everything else as is. And on the right-hand side, I have negative 10 minus 25x. My next step is now to use inverse operations to move the variables to one side. Again, move the smaller one. So negative 4, negative 25. I'm going to add 25x to both sides, leaving me with negative 31 plus 21x equals negative 10. Now that my variable's on the left-hand side, I'm going to move my constants to the right-hand side. Left-hand side, I have 21x equals negative 10 plus 31 is 21. And I divide both sides by 21, leaving me with x equals 1. Alright, there are 2 examples for you. Again, use those steps that we talked about. Distribute, combine like terms on either side, use inverse operations to move the variables and the constants, and then solve as is. Thanks, guys.